Lover's Moon, a novel by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss, read by the authors. Friday, June 17th, 2011. Chapter 13. Michael. 5:26 a.m. I woke up naked in a pool of blood. "Not again," I whispered, and with the words came the taste of that blood on my tongue and lips. A man cannot destroy the savage in him by denying its impulses. The only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. I'm not sure why those words from Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde flashed through my mind. Apart from the fact I was coated in rabbit blood, that wasn't a surprise. My alter ego often hunted, killed, and consumed rabbits. What surprised me, though, was that there was more than rabbit blood coating the ground and leaves where I woke up. The blood was from at least 2 other species. When it came to rabbit blood, I was intimately familiar with that. The second scent I was able to deduce was the blood of a raccoon. I can't recall having ever killed a raccoon before. Central Park had its fair share of them, but they were vicious little creatures, especially if they carried rabies. But I couldn't detect the bitter scent of rabies in the blood. It took me another minute to determine what the third blood type was. A coyote. Those were exceptionally rare in this park. Not for the first time since living with this lycanthropic curse, I wondered what the heck I'd gotten myself into the previous night when prowling around on all fours. I didn't even have to use my sense of scent to track down the carcasses of the 3 animals whose blood I was soaking in, because they were all there, plainly visible. The rabbit looked like it had been eaten. I'd found plenty of rabbit carcasses over the years, and knew what one my wolf self had picked clean looked like. But the raccoon and the coyote hadn't been eaten. They'd been ravaged and violently torn apart. As I looked at the severed pieces of their bodies, I felt like I was looking at a scene of the aftermath of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-style slasher film. I gagged and almost threw up on the forest floor. But I didn't, because sadly, this was the 3rd day in the past week that I'd woken up to this now familiar scene. Before this transition, my wolf self had never done anything like that, and I recognized it as a crime of passion. I'd conducted enough research into murder crime scenes for the mysteries I wrote to know how detectives could determine crimes of opportunity versus crimes of passion. Victims with dozens of stab wounds, for example, were evidence of a very personal attack, likely fueled by anger or some other intense emotion. This made me wonder if part of my human emotions were seeping into the wolf. I was, after all, completely pissed with the fact that, despite how close we had been, having spent every single night together since the first night we'd had sex, I'd had to bail on Gail. Not to mention how angry I was that I'd let myself get that close to anyone. How could I possibly have an actual relationship with a woman when I had to disappear for 10 days every single month? I hated myself for purposely avoiding Gail since June 10th. And I hated myself for lying to Gail. Particularly because when I had told her I was booked to go away on an out-of-town trip for an author event, I felt like she could see right through my lie. But worse than that, I smelled the immediate instinctual hurt she projected while I was telling her about my trip. She had been lied to and cheated on before. I was likely just the latest in a string of bad choices with the wrong men. I hated myself for causing that hurt, and for believing that I could ever have a normal life, a normal relationship with someone. All that repressed emotion, that unsolved tension and anger at myself and my situation, was obviously coming out when I was in full animal form. This couldn't keep happening. I needed to put a stop to this. There was no way I could be with Gail. As I was scrambling through the woods to find the spot where I'd hidden a stash of clothes, I resolved to not call or text her. While pretending to be away, I regularly texted lies about where I was or what I was doing, but that all had to end. I would drop the charade that I was out of town and tell her I was coming clean with her. I'd tell her I'd been using her for research for my book and no longer wanted to see her. The sex was great, but I got what I needed from her, and it was time to move on. 1:27 p.m.
Excellent choice,
Gail said as she rang in the purchase for the exquisitely matching goth couple she was serving. I had to admit, this pair of goth teens had nailed their outfits and makeup. Though they were a male and female couple, something I could tell from their scents, they looked identical and could easily have been mistaken for twins if it wasn't for the fact the two had openly made out with one another when Gail had popped into the back room to retrieve a box for their purchase. The goth couple had come in just a minute after I'd showed up at Gail's shop. I should have called or texted her. That's what the kids do nowadays, isn't it? But I couldn't do that to her. It felt like too mean of a thing to do, too impersonal. She deserved better than that. Gail had, of course, been surprised to see me. Along with that surprise came warmth and a sense of pure pleasure from her. That gave me pause about addressing this, and I was immediately kicking myself for deciding to do this in person.
"You're back,"
she said. It was a statement and a question.
"I thought you weren't back until the 21st.
Yeah, there was a shipment issue for the last 2 bookstores on the journey. They didn't have enough stock, so the signings were called off. When I'd come up with a lie about talks and book signings that would take me out of town, I'd counted on the fact that Gail knew very little about the book industry. It was rare for publicists to set up a book tour, even a mini one, 9 months after a book's release. Publishers usually focused all their energy and resources on propping up books during the first month of its release. They might get behind arranging events for an author outside that new release phase if the author was already traveling to a region and make time in their schedule to include a bookstore stop or 2 along the way. If Gail questioned that, I'd planned to use the excuse that the publisher was doing it to play off the hype of the forthcoming movie tie-in. The layers of deception I'd already concocted were easy. I did, after all, make up shit for a living. But I had also shocked myself at how easily I'd been able to compound lie after lie, piling them up like a beaver piling up sticks to create a dam. Only, it felt more to me like I was building a dam, as well as damming any hope of a decent and honest relationship with a woman whose company I truly enjoyed. I realized what I had just done. I'd lied again. I'd perpetuated the initial lie with another new one instead of using the opportunity to come clean with her. I never actually left town, was what I had intended to say to her. I lied to you. I've been here the whole time, and the reason I lied is I don't want to see you anymore. But I didn't. Instead, I manufactured another tale. And that was when the goth couple had come into the shop, interrupting any further discussion. Gail turned to greet and serve them. I'd known the challenge she and Isabeau faced with the recent bee catastrophe repairs and all the lost inventory in the shop. She needed every sale she could get. Watching her interact with them, I could tell they were primed for an easy upsell. And knowing Gail's intuitive nature and the way she read people, I figured she could pick up on that too. Considering how desperately in need of any extra sales her shop was, I was shocked to watch her serve the couple's needs without ever using the leverage she could have pulled off effortlessly. She helped them, answered a slew of their questions, and complimented them on their on-point matching outfits. She even shared that she recognized that their looks seemed to be a nod to the look and style of Peter Murphy, the lead singer of Bauhaus, the band often attributed with the start of the modern goth culture movement. Watching her interact with customers was a truly wonderful experience. I realized I'd never seen her in her element. She was so in control, so in the groove, so masterful in her approach. I had to catch myself because I realized I was practically swooning while watching this brilliant and gorgeous woman work. Why the heck did I want to break this off? What the hell was wrong with me? She wished the goth couple well as they headed out the door and turned back to me. The smile on her face melted my heart.
"So,"
she said, walking slowly toward me.
"you're back early. Maybe we could catch the Green Lantern? It opens tonight. I know it's not Spider-Man, your favorite superhero, but it does star Ryan Reynolds, and he's Canadian."
She placed both hands on my chest, and I swear I felt a tingling. Seeing her smile, smelling her enthusiasm for doing something as mundane as seeing a movie with me, and feeling the electric spark of her touch was too damn much. I am, after all, a mere mortal. I couldn't do confrontation on the best of days, and being presented with this compassion, thoughtfulness, and just plain sexiness pushed me even further from the ability to speak the words I'd come to her shop to say. Before I could say anything, the front door opened and a middle-aged white woman with sunglasses nestled above her bangs walked in. Her blonde hair was tied into a long and thick rope-like braid that cascaded in front of her right shoulder and ended mid-breast of a light blue zip-up hoodie. The scent coming off this woman was a curious mix of nervousness and excitement. She had never come into a shop like this, that much was clear, but she'd come with a sense of wonder and hope, as if she was here to do research. I could picture the minivan she drove parked out on the street and got the sense that she had driven in after dropping her kids off at a nearby soccer tournament. Gail excused herself and walked back toward the door.
Welcome to Enchanting Magic. I'm Gail, one of the co-owners. How can I help you?
Well, the woman said, and her voice was filled with the trepidation and hope I detected in her scent. I'm not sure if you can help me, but I just found out something about my ancestors that I'd like to learn more about.
Oh, good,
Gail said, clapping her hands together.
I do love a challenge. Hit me.
The woman, it turned out, had been adopted. Just recently she came upon the details about her birth mother, and part of the woman's legacy was that she was a descendant of one of the 30 witches found guilty during the Salem witch trials. She was worried that this meant there was something inherently wrong with her, that she might be some sort of devil spawn and might need some kind of potion or spell to help purify her soul. There was nothing to sell to this woman, and yet I watched Gail spend well over an hour with her, sharing some insights and history about the tragic events of Massachusetts in the 1690s. She also relayed the origins of Wicca and Neo-Druidism, the more modern pagan offshoots derived from 19th century Romanticism and, earlier than that, Renaissance magic. Gail explained the ties between artistic, literary, and intellectual movements to a spiritual movement that promoted the cultivation of honorable relationships with the physical landscapes, the flora, the fauna, the people, and with nature deities and the spirits of place. She relayed the importance of divinity in nature. She shared how, prior to the Christian era, witches were honored and loved for centuries. Witches were consulted for relief in sickness, counsel in times of trouble, and involved in highly sought-after benevolent fertility-related rituals. By the time Gail was finished with the woman, I sensed the incredible amount of relief coming off her. The woman had walked in fearful, nervous, and embarrassed about her ancestry. But by the time she left, she was feeling assured and even proud of who she was. I'd watched Gail in action, not as a salesperson, nor as merely a scholar familiar with the occult. She was almost more of an effective and empathic therapist. It made me realize that instead of continuing to lie to her or try to break things off, maybe I could figure out a way to tell her the truth about who and what I was. After all, she might be one of the only people to actually believe me, and she might be the best person to help me understand more about my wolfish nature. But I wasn't sure how to do that yet. For now, it was easier for me to just go with the string of lies I had originally set up, until I could figure out the best way to relay this information to her. I still had 3 more days left of turning into a wolf, so I knew I wouldn't be able to see that movie with her tonight. Listen, I said, I just came to let you know I'm back in town, and it was really good to see you. It was particularly fun to watch you at work. You're damn good at what you do. But I'm not going to be able to go to that movie tonight, fun as that sounds. I was unable to get any useful writing done during this mini book tour. I'm behind again, and I need to spend every waking moment digging into the book and getting things back on track. It was a weak excuse, but it was the best I could come up with on the spot. I sensed her disappointment, but her sadness over me having to say no to tonight's plan morphed into an odor tinged with suspicion.
You came all the way here just to tell me you're back and can't hang out?
I missed you, I said. Yeah, I have a ton of writing to catch up on, but I missed you and I wanted to see you. The scent of suspicion was replaced with that same warmth and spontaneous joy I'd smelled on her when I had first stepped into the shop. She again placed her hands on my chest and kissed me gently on the lips.
Off you go, Shakespeare. Get that quill in your hand and get that writing done. I'll be here when you're all caught up.
As I walked out the door, the taste of her strong on my lips, I was reminded that I was deceiving someone I had grown to truly care about, and I'd better come up with a way to explain my wolfish nature to her so I could stop making up this growing pack of lies. especially since I doubted I would be able to keep this deception going for much longer. I owed it to Gail to stop lying and tell her the truth. She deserved nothing less. You've been listening to Lover's Moon, a paranormal romantic comedy by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss. Read by the authors. Lover's Moon is book 5 in the Canadian Werewolf series, published by Stark Publishing and available in print, ebook, and audiobook. The music used in this production, Waltz Primordial by Kevin MacLeod featuring Alexander Nakarada, was licensed via Incomptech.com and is copyrighted by Kevin MacLeod.